Hey there everyone, this is Dan from the Strength Coach Tutor. Thanks for checking out today's video. Today we're going to go over the 6 different types of part practice from chapter 8 in the textbook in the sports psychology chapter. So these 6 different types of part practice can be kind of confusing and trying to differentiate them from one another. So let's go ahead and get started and look at what some of these differences are and what they each mean. So we can break apart these different types of part practice into 2 different categories. The first category is where we take a whole skill, a skill in its entirety, and break it down into smaller pieces. And then we have taking parts of a skill and building it back into the whole skill. So putting all the pieces of the puzzle back together, all right? So let's first go over the parts or the pieces of part practice where we're taking the whole skill and breaking it down into smaller pieces. So those 3 different types of part practice are going to be segmentation, fractionalization, and simplification. All right, so segmentation is when we have whatever skill it is and we're breaking down that task into its subcomponents. And so for all these 6 different types of part practice, I'm going to use the same example of a power clean, and we're going to assume that the power clean has just 3 phases: first pull, second pull, and catch. Okay, so with segmentation, if we're referring to that power clean example, it would be taking the whole skill of power clean and breaking it down to those 3 subcomponents: the first pull, the second pull, and the catch. All right. Each of those phases have a clear break in between them. Right. If you were to watch someone do a power clean, it's very easy to distinguish the differences between those 3. Okay. Fractionalization gets a little bit trickier here. This is where we look at a certain task or a subcomponent or multiple subcomponents that are occurring simultaneously. And the example that I like to use for this is during the second pull of the power clean, we have a lot going on. Right? We have triple extension of the lower extremity. We have plantar flexion, knee extension, and hip extension, right? That's triple extension of the lower extremity. That's all happening while we're also doing that pull motion, right? That it's almost like an upright row / shrug motion with the upper extremity, right? So all that's going on, the triple extension of the lower extremity and this upright row shrugging motion as well, right? So we can break that into 2 different pieces, right? We can break that into the triple extension piece, and we can break that into the upright row shrugging piece, right? And that would be fractionalization, because we could practice those individually because they're happening simultaneously during that second pull of the power clean, all right? Next piece is going to be simplification, all right? Simplification is literally just changing the equipment that you use or the speed of the execution of that movement. So say, for example, you're practicing the power clean, it would be using an empty barbell. You're just using the barbell, which you could perform that exercise at a slower speed to try and perfect your movement pattern. Or you could end up using a wooden dowel or a broomstick or something of that nature, where again, you're changing the equipment that you're using, right? You're not using a barbell anymore, but it also changes your execution speed because you can move that equipment at a much slower rate and in a controlled manner, all right? So segmentation, fractionalization, and simplification are the 3 methods of taking a whole skill and breaking it down into smaller parts or pieces, all right? So now when we take pieces of a skill, parts of a skill, some components, and try and piece them back together, those 3 types of part practice are going to be pure part training, progressive part training, and then repetitive part training, all right? And so how I like to explain these here is actually describe them in sets. If you were to train these, so to speak, this is how it would look like, and we're still going to use the same power clean example. So give me a second here. I'm going to pull up my whiteboard. Now that I have my whiteboard pulled up, these are the 3 different types of part practice where we are taking parts of a skill and reintegrating them back into the whole. So we have pure part training, progressive part training, and repetitive part training. So when we try and actually break these down into, if we were going to do sets or reps of the skill to reintegrate it back together, this is what it's going to look like. All right, so pure part training is we're going to practice each subcomponent of a skill, and then we practice this skill in its entirety. So if I break this down to sets, and I'm going to still use that same power clean example where we have 3 parts: first pull, second pull, catch. All right, and I'm going to use 5 reps for everything. That's just an arbitrary number. All right, doesn't mean anything. So set 1 would be 5 reps of first pull. Set 2 would be 5 reps of second pull. Set 3 would be 5 reps of the catch, right? And then so set 4, right? At this point, I have now practiced each subcomponent individually, right? I did 5 reps for each subcomponent. Now I'm going to practice the skill in its entirety. So I'm going to do 5 reps of power cleans, right? I'm going to do 5 sets of a power clean. Or I'm sorry, 5 reps. I'm going to do 5 reps of a power clean, all right? And so that's it. You practice each subcomponent individually, and then at the very end, you practice the skill in its entirety, all right? Now let's look at progressive part training. So this one's the last two kind of they sound very similar, but there are some distinct differences here. So progressive part training is where you practice the first 2 parts in isolation before you practice them together, and then you practice the third part on its own, and then you reintegrate all 3 parts together. So what that looks like, so set 1 would be 5 reps of first pull. Set 2 would be 5 reps of second pull. So now, right, I said you do the first 2 parts in isolation, right, which we just did, then we practice them together. So now we're going to do 5 reps of first and second pull together, right? So as soon as I do my first pull, I go straight into my second pull. That's what that's saying there. So then now set 4, after I've done the first 2 parts together, I now practice the third part in isolation. So 5 reps of catch. And now that I've done that, I can now practice the skill in its entirety. So I'm going to do 5 reps of power clean, okay? So now repetitive part, let's pay attention here to see some of the differences. So repetitive part is saying you practice the first part in isolation, and then you keep adding the subsequent component until you get the whole skill. And so why it's called repetitive part is because you end up repeating that previous subcomponent again and again and again. So what that looks like is set 1 would be 5 reps of first pull. Set 2 would be 5 reps of first pull and second pull. Then set 3 is 5 reps of power clean, right? Because now I've added all 3 subcomponents, right? I just had the first pull, then I have first pull, second pull, then I have first pull, second pull, and catch, right? I kept building upon that initial or first subcomponent. So those are the 6 different types of part practice, right? Segmentation, fractionalization, and simplification is where we take the whole skill and break it down into smaller subcomponents. And then we had pure part training, progressive part training, and repetitive part training, where we take all the pieces of the subcomponents and try and piece them back together to reintegrate to get back to that whole skill. All right. Hope you guys found this video useful. Please do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys need more help studying for your CSCS exam, you can go to thestrengthcoachtutor.com, or you can do one-on-one tutoring sessions with me so I can answer your individual questions, or you can join our online classroom where you have hundreds of practice questions, including a full-length exam and a self-paced course to really provide you with all the needs that you could possibly ever want when you're studying for the CSCS exam. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.